What if the healing you've been searching for isn't out there, but quietly ringing inside you? Not with sound, but with stillness. Not through answers, but through presence. In this journey, we won't teach you to escape your pain. We'll gently guide you to sit with it, to breathe with it, and to listen. Because sometimes, the bell doesn't need to be struck. It just needs to be heard. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is a truth, waiting to be remembered. 1. The Forgotten Temple Within. Touching the place of inner silence. There is a temple inside each of us, older than memory, untouched by time. It was not built of stone or wood, but of awareness, long before you learned your name, before the world taught you how to run from pain. This temple stood quietly within you, and at its center was a bell, not one to call others, not one to be heard with ears, but a bell that rang with presence itself. Perhaps you remember it, not clearly, but vaguely, like the trace of a fragrance from childhood, or a dream you almost held on to upon waking. The memory is not sharp. It's soft, woven into the silence between your thoughts. It is the silence that once made you feel whole. But now, the temple seems far away, covered with ivy and dust, its entrance blocked by the debris of so many forgotten yesterdays. You don't know when you last entered it. Perhaps you never knew it was there. Life moved you too quickly. Responsibilities multiplied. You learned to protect yourself from the things that hurt, and in protecting yourself, you slowly forgot how to come home. The bell stopped ringing, not because it lost its sound, but because you stopped listening, and yet it waits. It has always waited, not impatiently, not in judgment, but with the patience of the mountain, the stillness of the moon, the faith of the ocean's tide. To return to this temple, you don't need to search the world. You don't need to earn it or deserve it. You need only stop. Just stop. Sit down. Close your eyes. If that helps, breathe in, breathe out, and feel the space between. It is there, in the still pause after your exhale, that the path reveals itself. The silence inside you is not emptiness. It is not a void. It is alive. It listens. It holds the parts of you you've buried, the frightened child, the exhausted adult, the angry, grieving, lonely parts. All of them seated in the courtyard of your inner temple, waiting for your return. They do not need answers. They do not ask for solutions. They ask only for presence, your presence, because presence is what you've been missing. Not knowledge, not control, just presence, just the willingness to be with what is, without trying to change it. Can you do that? Can you sit beside your sorrow, like you would sit beside a friend, without speaking, without turning away? Can you walk through the door of your forgotten temple and say to the wounded parts of you, I am here? You may be afraid. You may tremble. That is no wrong. That is not a sign of failure. It is a sign you are near something real. In the world outside, we are taught to escape, to entertain, to numb. But here, in this sacred place, nothing needs to be escaped. Even fear is welcomed. Even your trembling hands are holy. The first time you return, you may find nothing but quiet. You may wonder if the temple was just an idea, a beautiful metaphor. But come again, return again, breathe again. Trust the stillness. Trust that beneath the surface, healing is already beginning, like seeds in the soil. Something is moving invisibly. The temple is not found in one sitting. It is rediscovered breath by breath. Each breath sweeps a little more dust from the stone floor. Each breath opens a window to let the light in. Each breath touches a wall you once thought you needed and gently begins to soften it. Do not rush this. Do not force your way in. The door of the temple opens inward, and it only opens when you are gentle. Harshness will never bring you home. Aggression, even toward your pain, only deepens the forgetting. You have been conditioned to believe that healing must be loud and dramatic, like thunder clearing the sky. But in truth, healing begins in the quietest of places. It begins when you kneel beside your own suffering and whisper, "I see you." It begins when you no longer try to exile your grief or disguise your sadness. It begins when you offer a seat to what hurts and allow it to be held, not by explanation, but by your own compassionate awareness. This is mindfulness, not a technique, not an escape, but a way of returning to the truth. The truth is not always pleasant. The truth is not always painless, but the truth is what frees you, and it lives in the silence behind your breath. You do not need to be fixed. There is nothing broken in you that love cannot hold. The world may have told you otherwise. The world may have pointed out your cracks and scars, but the temple within you was never made of glass. It was made of sky and earth and the sound of bells that ring without sound. It was built to hold storms. When you sit in mindfulness, when you breathe with full awareness, you do not simply relax, you awaken the sacred. You call the bell to sound again, and though no one else may hear it, your heart will. It will remember. It will echo. The silent bell inside you rings only when you stop trying to be anything other than what you are. It rings when you become still, when you become kind, when you return to the only place you've ever truly belonged. This moment, this breath, this quiet space inside. You do not need a teacher to lead you there. You are both student and temple, seeker and Baal. All the wisdom you need is already in you, waiting to be touched with gentle attention. So let this be the beginning. Let this be the first time you reach out, not to change yourself, but to hold yourself, not to conquer your pain, but to companion it. Walk slowly, breathe gently, and listen. Can you hear it? Not in your ears, but in your chest. Not in your thoughts, but in the still water of your presence. The bell has always been ringing, and now you are home. 2. The breath that rings. Awaken the silent bell. There are moments when the world becomes too loud. Even in silence, the noise is not always around us. It lives within us. Unfinished stories, restless thoughts, the echo of what was never said, the ache of what was never heard. In such a world, we long for a bell, not to alert or awaken others, but to return us to ourselves. Not every bell has a sound. Some bells ring through presence alone. The most sacred bell is the breath. The breath is our first companion and our last. It was with you before you knew language. It remained when the world misunderstood you. It held you in the middle of the night, in your grief, in your joy, even when you forgot it was there. And yet we rarely greet it. We rarely pause to touch its gentleness. Mindfulness is nothing more and nothing less than this sacred greeting. To breathe in, fully aware that you are breathing in. To breathe out, without trying to escape the moment. That is all. But in that simple return, something extraordinary happens. The bell rings, and not a bell of bronze or wood, but the bell of returning to life. Each time you breathe with awareness, you do not simply survive. You come back. You return to a place where time stops running, and suffering is not an enemy to be conquered, but a guest to be welcomed. The breath creates space, and in that space, healing begins. The breath is not a tool. It is a doorway. It does not need to be shaped or manipulated. It only needs to be touched, gently, like the hand of someone you once loved, but had forgotten to hold. Try now. Sit where you are. Let the body be as it is. Let the mind remain untamed. Do not demand silence from your thoughts. Do not ask your feelings to behave. Just breathe, gently, as if your lungs were the wings of a bird at rest. Breathing in, I know I am here. Breathing out, I return to this moment. This is the bell that rings, not outside, but in the temple of your chest. Perhaps your breath is shallow. That is okay. Perhaps your attention drifts. That too is okay. There is no need to perform. This is not a ceremony to impress anyone, not even yourself. It is simply a reunion, you and your breath, sitting together like two old friends who once parted ways and now meet again, smiling softly, without words. When you breathe mindfully, the breath stops being background noise. It becomes the music of presence. You no longer move through your day carried by momentum. You move with intention. Each breath becomes an act of love. And what greater miracle could there be? To walk through the world not asleep, but awake, to drink tea and taste the leaves, to wash dishes and feel the warmth of the water, rather than rush through them on the way to something more important. The breath brings importance to what we once overlooked. The ordinary becomes sacred. The mundane becomes intimate. Life no longer lives beside you. It lives through you. And in the center of all this, the bell. A bell that needs no hammer. A bell that needs no hand. A bell that waits only for you to listen. It rings when you breathe in with awareness. It echoes when you breathe out with kindness. The bell is your aliveness, not the dramatic parts, the ones that make stories, but the quiet wonder of being here at all. The breath is not just air. It is life's most ancient way of saying, you are still here. You are still part of everything. Let that truth settle deep in your bones. You are part of the mountains and rivers. You are not separate from the wind that moves through the trees. You share breath with the sparrow, with the oceans, with the forests. Every breath you take has passed through 1,000 beings. You are not isolated. You belong. When you breathe mindfully, you affirm that belonging. You say yes to life, not just when it is peaceful, but also when it is chaotic. You stop holding your breath in fear. You stop resisting your feelings. You allow the breath to move through you, like a bell that rings in all directions, waking up parts of you that have long been asleep. And slowly, gently, that breath begins to soften what was once tense, the fear in your shoulders, the grief in your chest, the anger in your belly. You do not need to fight these things. You do not need to push them away. Just breathe with them. Let the breath be a companion to all that aches. Breathing in, I see my sorrow. Breathing out, I hold it like a child. This is how the bell rings, through kindness, not control. There is no rush. Healing is not a race. You do not need to prove anything to the world, or even to yourself. This is not a performance. This is a homecoming. Let each breath be a footstep. Let each exhale be a doorway. Let each pause be a resting place. You may cry. That is good. That is the body's way of releasing what it no longer needs to carry. You may laugh. That too is good. That is joy rediscovered in the smallest moments. Do not judge either. Breath does not discriminate between tears and joy. It holds both with the same tenderness. Sometimes you will lose this connection. That too is natural. You will forget to breathe with awareness. The world will pull you away. That is not failure. That is simply part of the path. And when you remember again, when you find yourself stopping to breathe with presence, you will feel the bell ringing once more. It never stopped. You only drifted. And drifting is part of returning. Let this breath be a teacher, not a loud one, but a quiet, consistent presence. Let it guide you back to your own body, back to your senses, back to the moment. No need for mantras if they feel too heavy. No need for rituals if they distract you. Just breathe. Just listen. Just be. You do not need to change your breath. You only need to feel it, as it is, where it is, whether it is soft or strained. It is still yours. It is still life. And when you feel the breath moving freely, when you notice it, without gripping it, without shaping it, then you are hearing the bell. You are ringing it simply by being present. It is the sound of you being here. fully, without apology. This is how we heal, not by escaping ourselves, but by entering fully into ourselves, one breath at a time. The wounded self is not asking for a cure. It is asking to be witnessed. The bell does not demand silence in the world. It invites peace in the middle of the noise. And the breath is the instrument by which that peace is played. So sit with your breath. Walk with your breath. Eat with your breath. Live with your breath. Let it be the friend who never left. Let it be the bell that rings whenever you remember to return. You do not need a monastery to find peace. You do not need a mountain or a cave. You carry the bell inside, and the breath is how you ring it. Breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. And home has never been far. It was as near as your next breath. 3. Embracing the broken child. Deep listening with compassion. Somewhere inside each of us, there is a child who stopped speaking, not because they had nothing to say, but because no one stayed long enough to listen. This child did not disappear. They did not leave. They simply went quiet, hiding in the corners of our breath, waiting for a tenderness that never came. You may feel their presence sometimes, not in words, but in the sudden sadness that rises for no reason. The tightening of the chest in a quiet room. The way your body still flinches at soft rejection. This child is not a memory. They are a living part of you. And though they do not speak in sentences, their silence is a language that longs to be heard. Mindfulness allows us to come home to this child, not to fix them, not to explain them, but to sit beside them. We do not need to bring answers. We need to bring presence. We need to bring breath. The broken child is not asking for your strength. They are asking for your honesty. They are asking you to stop pretending that you are always fine, to stop running from the wound as though it were shameful. They are asking you to sit on the floor with them, in the dark, and whisper, I see you. I'm here. Deep listening begins here, in the willingness to be silent, without abandoning. When we listen deeply to ourselves, we no longer rush in with advice or correction. We listen with the same reverence as we would listen to the rain falling on leaves or the waves arriving at shore. We do not try to stop the sound. We simply allow it. The child within us has been told many things. Don't cry. Be strong. Get over it. These messages, spoken or unspoken, taught us that to feel deeply was dangerous. So we built walls. We wore smiles. We learned the art of performing okayness. And yet behind every wall we built, the child waited, not for perfection, but for presence. You may wonder, how do I begin? How do I speak to a child who does not use words? The answer is not in what you say. It is in how you stay. Sit quietly. Place your hand on your heart. Breathe in, not to change anything, but to return. Breathe out, as if exhaling a soft lullaby. Let your breath say what your words cannot. I will not leave you. The practice of mindfulness is not separate from this. When we breathe with awareness, we create a space where the child feels safe again, not because the world outside has changed, but because we are finally showing up, fully, gently, without conditions. Sometimes the child will weep. Sometimes they will remain still. Do not rush either. The child may have waited decades for this moment. There is no need to force their healing. Your presence is enough. You, sitting quietly and breathing with love, is a revolution. It is the opposite of abandonment. It is sanctuary. In Buddhist practice, compassion is not pity. Compassion is the ability to see clearly and to remain. It is the capacity to be with suffering without needing it to disappear immediately. When we listen with compassion, we do not aim to solve. We aim to understand. We listen to the story beneath the pain. And then we go even deeper, into the silence beneath the story. This is how the child heals, not when we offer solutions, But when we offer stillness, the child doesn't need to be taught how to be whole. They need to be held while they remember. They need to be reminded that their tears are not weakness, that their trembling is not failure. They need someone, perhaps for the first time, to look at them with eyes that do not turn away. You may feel unprepared. You may think you are too wounded to help anyone, even the child within. But your very wound is the doorway. Your own brokenness teaches you how to stay with pain, not as a rescuer, but as a witness. There is strength in that kind of softness. There is wisdom in that kind of listening. In the practice of deep listening, we learn to hold space, not just for the child, but for ourselves as we are now. We may notice resistance. We may want to run. We may hear the mind say, "This is too much." That is okay. Listen to that voice too. Let it be part of the practice. Every voice inside you is a child needing to be heard. Sometimes the child within does not show their face. They speak through the way we sabotage ourselves, through the way we lash out, go silent, or avoid intimacy. These are not flaws. They are survival songs. They are how the child protected themselves when no one else did. Can you bow to that strength, even as you outgrow it? Mindfulness is the art of bowing inward. It is the sacred act of placing our hands together, not toward a God in the sky, but toward the pain that lives in our chest, and saying, "I honor your struggle. I honor your staying." This isn't poetry. It is practice. It is presence, and it changes everything. As you walk, as you sit, as you drink tea, make space for the child. Let them accompany you. Speak to them softly. Let your breath be the lullaby you never received. Let your silence be the embrace that was missing. The child may not speak, but they will know. They will know by the way you slow down, by the way you pause before judging yourself, by the way you no longer push pain away as if it were an enemy. They will know they are safe now, and in that safety, they will begin to bloom, not suddenly, not loudly, but like a flower in the early light of morning. You may never hear them say, "Thank you," but you will feel it. You will feel it in the way your body softens, in the way your anger loses its sharpness, in the way your sadness becomes water instead of stone. This is what happens when we listen, not just with ears, but with breath, with patience, with love. There is no graduation from this practice. There is no point where the child no longer needs you, but there will come a time when the child begins to trust you, and that trust will be the beginning of peace. To embrace the broken child is not to become someone new. It is to become someone true. It is not to abandon the past, but to include it in your wholeness, to say, "This too is part of me," and mean it. When you listen deeply, you become a refuge, not only for yourself, but for others, because the child in you is not different from the child in others. When you hold your pain tenderly, you make it easier to hold the world's pain, too. This is the path of compassion. This is the soundless bell of love, not ringing to call attention, but to offer shelter, not demanding silence, but inviting healing. And so we return, again and again, to the place where the child waits, not with urgency, but with grace. We sit, we breathe, we listen, and the child, at last, begins to believe, "I am not alone. I am not a burden. I am loved." 4. Becoming the bell, returning as wholeness. There is a moment in the practice when you stop seeking. It does not arrive with fanfare. No radiant light pierces the sky. No voice declares your awakening. It arrives so quietly, in fact, that you almost miss it. A pause in your thoughts, a softness in your chest, a breath that feels like it belongs. You are not striving anymore. You are not trying to become someone better, more healed, more wise. You are simply here, alive. And for once, that is enough. This is not the end of suffering. Life will still be life. There will be noise. There will be loss. The world will not bend to your comfort. But something has changed. You have stopped fighting. You have stopped fleeing. You are no longer running from yourself. And that, quietly and profoundly, is peace. You begin to understand that the bell you have listened for, the one that echoed through your breath, the one that spoke through silence, is no longer separate from you. You are not just hearing the bell. You are becoming it. Becoming the bell does not mean becoming holy or untouchable. It does not mean you are now above your pain or immune to confusion. It means you have discovered the art of being fully here. You have learned the music of presence. You are no longer a seeker of peace. You are the space where peace can arise. In the beginning, you practiced to return to yourself. Now, you realize that there was no distance to cross. The breath was always here. The wounded child was always waiting. The temple within was never truly abandoned. It only appeared empty because no one had been home in a long time. Wholeness is not something you find. It is something you remember, like waking from a dream of separation, like stepping back into a room you forgot you loved. You do not need to create anything new. You need only to sit deeply into what is already true. Your scars are still here, but you no longer hide them. You no longer carry shame in your pockets like stones. You no longer tighten your body when someone looks too closely. You have become spacious. You have become soft. The bell is not loud. It rings in your actions, in the way you speak gently to yourself, in the way you hold space for others without trying to fix them, in the way you pause before reacting, in the way you walk slowly through the garden, noticing the wind, the soil, the light. You carry the bell into the world, not as a symbol, but as a presence. People may not know why they feel calmer around you. They may not hear the bell with their ears, but something in them softens. Something in them recognizes something ancient in you, not perfection, but presence. When you are the bell, you do not need to speak loudly. You do not need to prove your wisdom. You sit, you breathe, you offer space, and that is enough. You become a refuge, not because you are unshakable, but because you are rooted. You are no longer afraid of your own weather. You know how to stay with your storms. You know how to rest under your own sky, so others begin to feel that they can rest near you. 2. This is not about becoming a teacher or a guide. This is not about roles. This is about returning to the truth of being human, raw, tender, impermanent, and utterly sacred. The bell rings, not when we shout our wisdom, but when we embody our silence, when we know how to listen without needing to reply, when we meet the pain of the world not with armor, but with breath, when our very being says, "You are safe here. You are seen. You are not trying to ring the bell anymore. You have become the bell, not by effort, but by surrender, not by force, but by resting so deeply in yourself that there is no longer a separation between the listener and the sound. You walk into the world, and your presence rings, not always with joy, sometimes with grief, sometimes with uncertainty, but always with truth, always with heart. The child within you walks beside you now, not behind, not beneath, but beside. You no longer see them as broken. You see them as wise. They survived. They stayed. They kept your stories safe. And now, you carry them with gratitude. When you eat, you taste the bell. When you touch the earth with your bare feet, you feel the bell vibrating in the soil. When you close your eyes and place your hand over your heart, you are not asking for guidance. You are listening to yourself. You do not rush. You do not push. You understand that everything ripens in its own time, even healing, even love. There is no end to the practice. There is only deepening. There is only breathing more fully into what is, becoming more available to the moment, more at home, in the impermanent beauty of now. The bell rings in your patience, In your honesty, in your return to simplicity, you no longer look for escape. You look for intimacy. You are not asking life to change. You are asking to be awake enough to meet it. This is your wholeness, not a destination, not an achievement, but a rhythm, a returning. You are the bell. When you make room for your own joy, when you laugh fully, when you cry without shame, when you hold your failures with grace, you are the bell. When you see someone suffering and do not turn away, when you meet their eyes and say, without words, I know that place. I have walked through that pain, and I'm still here. You are the bell. When you live with integrity, when your inner world and your outer actions begin to align, when you do not betray your own heart in order to be loved, you are the bell. When you bow to life, not just when it is sweet, but when it is difficult, when it is ordinary, when it asks you to sit still and wait. Let this be your practice now, not to arrive, but to ring, not to be perfect, but to be present. Your voice is part of the sacred sound. Your breath is part of the great silence. Your being, exactly as it is enough. So when the wind moves through the trees, let it move through you too. When the rain falls gently on the leaves, let your thoughts soften with it. When the bell inside you rings, do not ask why, just listen. You are not separate from the bell. You are not the echo. You are the sound. And that sound, tender, steady, true, is the music the world has been waiting to hear.